is an open letter to friends and folks. In a couple of my previous videos, one is incel, the other one is Tesla and the broomstick, and the other one video is broomstick and Tesla. In these previous videos, I went over some provocative issues with regards to, women and race and sexism and racism and all of that. So if you were pissed off, they wrote back. So here's to you. I'm sorry you got pissed off, but uh, it seemed the main reason that more than if you got pissed off of my video was that the main reason was that uh, the person said we want to be happy. We as women want to be happy, and therefore in choosing a mate, oh, we are being very careful. We are being very particular in choosing a mate because we want to be happy. That was the idea. That was the gist of women's perspective, which it is. This is every goddamn truck passes. Here's the thing: happiness is a very arbitrary concept, and how arbitrary it is you can you can tell by the fact that my dog is happy when he doesn't have pain and he's got a full stomach. That's my dog, and that's happy. But frankly, Albert Einstein, as a symbol of intelligence on your planet, he's also has the same peculiarities as my dog had. If he didn't have pain, if he didn't have pain and he had a full stomach, he was happy. He probably required a pencil and a piece of paper to do some doodling, some math and physics on it, and keep himself busy. And in that condition, and he really, the pencil and the pencil and the paper was also not necessary. You could give him you could put Albert Einstein on a desert island. He would doodle on sand and keep himself busy. Doodle his math and his physics on sand with his finger or a piece of wood. Doodle on sand and still keep busy and happy, as long as full stomach, healthy body, and something to do. So as far as happiness is so arbitrary that my dog and Albert Einstein have the same requirements, basic requirements of happiness. Now the problem arises with women and with females of the species in general, and with uh, human females very specifically, is that first of all, they don't understand most of the time this feeling of happiness that they feel is arbitrary, that they're following objectives that are very different from my dog's objectives and Albert Einstein's objectives of happiness. What makes happy Albert Einstein is, full stomach, no pain, and a piece of paper and a pencil. But they don't follow that line of thought. They follow a very different line of thought. That's why I'm saying happiness is very arbitrary, gender specific, person specific, racially specific, economically specific. I mean, happiness, you give $100 to one person from one race, and he goes and buys silver with that $100, and puts it in his pillow. You give another $100 to another person, and he goes and buys a pair of shoes. that he has many of, he just adds one more. And you pay another, buy and give another $100 to another person, and he goes and spends it on some woman he just met. So, and they're all happy, you know, because they're following, they're achieving the objectives that the society around them, whether be it, society at large or their immediate society around them, familiar, extended family. Those the happy so happiness is very culture dependent because these three different people took three different actions with $100 and they're all happy. And what the actions that I've took, because the actions that they have took is those are the objectives that the society around them have set for them. You know, even religion dependent. It's sort of like, religion dependent. This happiness is also religion dependent, not only economically, socio economically dependent, religiously dependent, culturally. So, but in the age of internet, there is a problem, and that is a very fewer and fewer people have yet to decide what is happiness for a larger and larger number of people. And first, the main problem is that women like to emulate. This happiness is very important, very very specific to women. I said it's specific to females and specific to human females. Is that because women like to emulate a lot. Emulating is everything for women. Is everything. That's the whole fashion industry revolves around women because women like to emulate. You know, fashion industry doesn't revolve around men because men are not really particularly inclined to emulate other men, but women just love to, just can't get enough of emulating. Now the problem with that is that, and how it's related to your happiness. uh, I give you one statistics which I read in many places, and apparently it's true because I read it in a lot of places, and that is like 90% of women. It has been known, have become known that 90% of women on these dating apps are choosing 10% of men. 90% of women on these dating apps, on Tinder and Minder and Hinder and Kinder, the owners of these apps can pull up the statistics and basically read them, and they have noticed that 90% of women are choosing 10% of men. So you're seeing your happiness in that arbitrary happiness that I just spoke about. That is a very arbitrary concept. You're choosing your happiness based on, which is an arbitrary concept, based on your idols. You allow your idols to define happiness for you, and based on that, you behave in the society, and based on those objectives that make you happy. When I say your idols set your happiness for you, the idols are setting the standards that you like to achieve, the objectives that you like to achieve, and those objectives, which are not really your objectives, it's your idol's objectives, but because you're a woman, you like to emulate a lot. It's love to emulate. You want to be fashionable, so you love to emulate, and so you emulate the objectives of your idols as well. So when Kim Kardashian says, I have a wide ass, I like wide ass, blah blah ass, everybody pulls their ass out and start measuring their ass. So I'm sorry, it's the result is that you're all looking for a big ass, just like you're all looking for a specific man that fits the criteria that I just Taylor Swift has said. And the internet, this used to be tribal and familiar, these measurements of success and achievements and objectives to achieve in order to be happy. All these used to be said in a smaller and smaller communities of human beings. A small town in Japan without the internet had its own measure of happiness, and whichever of the young women of that town reached that measure of success in whether reproduction or whether work, whether wealth, whatever, in that small town, whichever of these young women reached that point, felt happy and satisfied. Now you're showing Kim Kardashian to the fucking villager in Namibia, and you're telling her that this is the measure of happiness, and when you reach that, you're going to be happy. Good luck. It's nuts. You see, this is a boyfriend or this is a husband, you know, and if you reach this objective, you should be satisfied and happy. And if not, you should be unhappy. You should save yourself for Christ. So my point is this: as long as, frankly, to cut it short, as long as women allow the society around them to define happiness for them, and as long as women like to emulate, you're never going to be happy. Why? Because, let's say, Elvis Presley is somebody, for example, he's dead, but he was somebody that all women, 90% of women, want to be measure their happiness with how close they can get to Elvis Presley. Well, Elvis Presley can't fuck all of you. You see what I'm saying? So are you left with? If you can't get fucked by Elvis Presley, that's the measurement of, the same measurement that I just mentioned, in which Tinder and other dating apps have come to the conclusion that 90% of women want to date only 10% of men. That means, 90% of men on Tinder and other dating apps are just going unnoticed. 10% are who 90% want to fuck. So you all want to fuck. Let's go, a little back and, make it very much more clear. 90% of women, 9 out of 10 women want to fuck Elvis Presley. Let's say, as a joke. But the point is this. Uh, why? Because those this connection through internet has resulted into that Japanese girl in that little town, the little village in Japan. Her standard, she no longer wants to fuck you know a guy down the street who goes to the same school. She also wants to fuck Elvis Presley. You see where I'm going with this? This connectivity has resulted into fewer and fewer influencers, idols, whatever you want to call them, calling the shots as of what is the objective, what is sexiness, what is sexy, what is fashion, what is fashionable, what is this. Fewer and fewer because of this connectivity. At one point, a woman in that village in Japan was deciding what is fashionable. Then, fashion became a countrywide matter, and, there was a GQ of Japan, GQ of Tokyo, which defined what is fashionable. Now, that GQ is owned by this GQ, and New York, only in New York, a few women in New York decide what is fashionable. Need I go further? So the point is this: your happiness is being defined, the objectives that you should try to reach in life, the desirable men that you should be striving to get close to in life, has been defined by fewer and fewer people. And now this doesn't affect men that much because men are not really into emulating each other that much. But women have this big problem because added to the fact that women like to emulate each other, now the whole it has become a global village, and fewer people at the top, or people that women decide they're at the top, decide what objectives, what things in life are important that women should that they strive to achieve. So those who follow them have to strive to achieve if they ever want to feel successful, which will result into their feeling of happiness, which result into the feeling of happiness. So therefore, you know, not everybody can fuck Elvis Presley. Now what? You have to then you're left with, okay, let me I will compromise and fuck somebody who looks like Elvis Presley. That has problems. That means in the mind of a woman, almost 90% of, again, because 10% of women can marry 10% of men or be involved or reproduce with 10% of men. What happens to the 90% of women who don't get to fuck Elvis Presley? Those are feel that even if you know they will compromise, have this feeling that they have to compromise. Which man wants to put up with a woman who walks through the door and thinks she has compromised? Nobody likes that. They stay for a few days or a few weeks or a few years, and then they decide, no, I don't want to be, I don't want to be also ran. I don't want, obviously my wife wanted to fuck Elvis Presley. She didn't get to fuck Elvis Presley, so now she has compromised to fuck an imitation of Elvis Presley. No, thank you very much. Men don't like to be imitations. When that small village in Japan that was isolated, no internet, maybe phone, but in that village, you know, there was not much compromising. There was very little room for compromise. There was not much compromising, and there was arranged marriages, which is the traditional way of uh, that reproduction work on your planet. But now, with the internet, with Elvis Presley, with this new girl, girls all around, but there's few at the top. Lopez this and Lopez that, and Ariana Grande this, and Jennifer Lopez that. A few hand people at the top in which women are trying to emulate. Not trying to. Women are apparently born emulators. Following these few and following the values of these few and following the objectives of these few, and if you reach those objectives, then you should feel satisfied, you should feel happy. This results into you know at the most compromising and marrying a Elvis Presley look-alike, or also similar to Elvis Presley, which you desire, and the result is never good. Soon will end into divorce, and they both will go their own way. It's you know solution. Solution is good public education. Solution is teaching women not to continue being these emulators, not continue to. The solution is basically telling women to try to subdue their desire to emulate others. if women, you know, subdue their desire to emulate others, maybe there's a chance. Or else you gotta, start reproducing humans in factories because, women have shown that they're not good pickers. They try to emulate and then they compromise, and soon after they get a divorce and they become single mothers. Because at the beginning they walked through the door, they felt they're compromising. They wanted Elvis Presley, it didn't happen. Now they're, fucking an Elvis Presley look-alike, and that is always, unhealthy for a relationship. No relationship can stand that. And all the result is all the single mothers. So, in conclusion, happiness is very arbitrary, dear ladies. It's you define happiness for yourself. If you want to, not make babies in factories, you have to define happiness for yourself.